He was supposed to be her past. Instead, he booked her for his wedding and made it impossible for her to say no. 6 weeks, one city, and a man who never stopped wanting her, while her body remembered what her mind tried to forget. Happy weekend to my lovely family. I hope the weekend is going well for everyone. How's the weather in your city? I love hearing from you all around the world, and thank you so much for all your sweet comments and constant support. Sienna Johnson had built her life on discipline, 3 years of relentless work, proving herself, running from a past that still woke her at 3 in the morning with her heart racing. She sat at her desk scrolling through emails. Another corporate gala confirmed. A celebrity birthday party. A destination wedding in the Maldives. Her calendar was booked solid for 8 months, her reputation spotless, her success undeniable. The next email loaded, and her world tilted. Wedding booking request. Xavier Whitmer. The name alone stopped her breath. Her fingers froze over the keyboard. Xavier. High-profile wedding. 6-week planning period. Las Vegas. Wedding date. June 5th. Generous compensation. And there, at the bottom, his name in bold black letters, like an accusation she'd spent 3 years trying to outrun. Her hands shook. The office felt too small, the air too thin. Memories she'd buried came rushing back, his voice, his touch, everything she'd destroyed when she ran. She closed her eyes and forced herself to breathe. Her response was curt and professional. Thank you for your interest, but I'm unable to take on this project. Best of luck with your upcoming wedding. She hit send before guilt could convince her she owed him more. It was done. She could move on, keep running, keep pretending she hadn't built her entire empire on the foundation of what she'd left behind. Her phone rang 30 seconds later. Unknown number. Every instinct screamed not to answer, but her hand moved on its own, lifting the phone to her ear. Sienna Johnson. Hello, Sienna. His voice. God, his voice. Different now, colder, stripped of warmth. This was the voice of a stranger, controlled and cutting, designed to hurt. Xavier. His name tasted like ash. You declined my booking request. No surprise in his tone, only cruel amusement. That's unfortunate. I don't think it's a good idea for us to work together. Her voice was steadier than she felt. I disagree. A pause, deliberate and loaded. You took what we built together, Sienna. Our designs, my contacts, the connections we built together. I have evidence, documentation, timestamps, everything you took to build your perfect little empire. The floor dropped out. I don't know what you're— Don't. The word cracked like a whip. Don't insult both of us by pretending you don't remember. You walked out without a word and built your empire on our work, on my network, my resources, the plans we made together. I let it go. I let you go. But I'm done being generous. Her throat closed. Here's what's going to happen, Xavier continued, his voice a blade wrapped in silk. You're going to take this job. You're going to come to Las Vegas and plan my wedding. 6 weeks, Sienna. Every detail. You'll do it with a smile, and you'll do it perfectly. And if I refuse, then I take you to court. I have documentation, emails, files, timestamps proving your business was built on work that was as much mine as yours. I'll ruin you. Your reputation, your business, everything you've worked so hard to build. I'll make sure everyone knows exactly how Sienna Johnson got her start. He let that sink in. Your flight is already booked. You leave tomorrow morning. I'll send the details. Xavier, please. 6 weeks, he repeated. And then you're free. Refuse, and I'll bury you. The line went dead. Sienna stood there, phone pressed to her ear, the silence more deafening than his words. Her legs gave out and she sank into her chair, staring at the email still open on her screen. Xavier Whitmer, the man she'd loved more than anything, the man she'd destroyed by leaving, and now he was going to make her watch him marry someone else. She opened her calendar and stared at the next 6 weeks of her life, every carefully planned event now meaningless. She had no choice. He knew it. She knew it. She'd been running, and he'd just dragged her back with a single phone call. The email notification chimed. Flight details for tomorrow, April 23rd. a hotel reservation at one of Las Vegas's most exclusive properties, an itinerary beginning April 24th and ending June 5th, his wedding day. Sienna closed her laptop and pressed her palms against her eyes, but she couldn't stop the tears that finally came, hot and bitter, and 3 years too late. She was trapped, and Xavier Whitmere knew exactly what he was doing. Sienna arrived in Las Vegas on April 24th, feeling like she was walking toward her own execution. The car Xavier sent drove her through the glittering strip. She stared out the window, letting the memories come. She'd spent 3 years burying them, but now there was no point fighting. She checked into her suite. The room was beautiful. She barely saw it. The meeting was scheduled for 2 o'clock in one of the hotel's private event spaces. Sienna told herself she could do this. It was just a job, just 6 weeks. Except this was different. She arrived 5 minutes early and immediately wished she'd been late. Xavier was already there, 3 years since she'd seen him, and the sight of him now hit like a physical blow. He stood with his back to the door, and even from behind she would have known him anywhere. Her body recognized him before her mind could catch up. He turned when he heard her enter, and their eyes met for the first time in 3 years. God, he was still beautiful. Older now, sharper, with new lines around his eyes, and a hardness that hadn't been there before. But still Xavier, the man she had loved with everything. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Xavier's jaw tightened as he wrestled something dark back under control. His hands flexed at his sides, and for just a second, she saw it. The raw anger, the pain, the want. It was there in the tension of his shoulders, in the way his eyes tracked over her face, in the barely perceptible hitch in his breathing. Then his expression went cold and blank, like a door slamming shut. Sienna. Her name in his mouth was sharp, detached, and somehow, that hurt more than if he'd shouted. He didn't smile, didn't move toward her, just watched her with eyes that used to look at her like she was the only thing in the world that mattered. Xavier. She forced herself to walk into the room, to close the distance, even though every instinct screamed to run. She could smell his cologne, familiar and devastating, and it took everything in her not to react. The tension was suffocating. His anger radiated off him, controlled but unmistakable. And underneath it, something else. His gaze dropped to her mouth for half a second, before snapping back to her eyes, and heat flooded her body in response. He cleared his throat, a small crack in his composure, and gestured to the table where a thick folder sat waiting. "Please, sit." She sat. He remained standing, and when he looked down at her, something in his expression made her skin warm. She hated that she responded to it, to the dominance in his posture, to the way he watched her like something that belonged to him. "You'll plan every detail," Xavier said, his voice professionally neutral. "The wedding is June 5th, 6 weeks from now. I expect perfection." "Of course." Her own voice sounded distant, like it belonged to someone else. "Emily will be joining us tomorrow to begin planning." He paused, and something flickered across his face, too quick to read. "She trusts me to handle most of the details." Sienna nodded, not trusting herself to speak. The reality crashed over her in waves. She was going to plan his wedding, watch him marry another woman, smile and be professional while her heart shattered. Xavier slid the folder across the table, and their fingers brushed. It was accidental, barely a touch, but electricity shot up her arm and her breath caught audibly. His hand jerked back like he'd been burned, and for just a moment, his mask slipped. She saw everything there, the longing, the rage, the ache. Then it was gone, locked away behind ice. "All the preliminary details are in here," he said, his voice rougher now. "Venue preferences, guest count, color schemes. Review everything tonight. We'll reconvene tomorrow at 9. Sienna opened the folder with unsteady hands. The first page made her heart stutter. The second made her chest ache. Everything was familiar. The flowers they'd chosen together years ago. The music. The venue style. These were their wedding plans. Every single detail they'd dreamed about together, building a future that would never happen. She looked up at him, searching for some explanation. some sign this was coincidence. But Xavier's expression was unreadable, carved from stone, and she knew with crushing certainty this was deliberate. He wanted her to know. He wanted her to feel every moment of this. "Is something wrong?" he asked, and there was an edge to the question, a cruelty that was so unlike the man she'd known it made her want to weep. "No," she managed, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's all very lovely." "Good." He moved to the window, putting distance between them, and Sienna felt like she could breathe again. "I've arranged for you to have full access to the hotel's event planning resources. Whatever you need, they'll provide." "Thank you." Silence stretched between them, heavy and suffocating. Sienna stared down at the folder, at plans that were a perfect replica of dreams she'd destroyed, and wondered how she was going to survive 6 weeks of this. "That's all for today," Xavier said finally. Sienna stood, gathering the folder, desperate to escape. She made it to the door before his voice stopped her. "Sienna." She turned, and the look on his face made her heart stutter. For just a moment, the mask was gone completely, and she saw him, the real him, hurt and angry and still, somehow, still looking at her like she was the only thing in the world that mattered. Then it was gone. "Welcome to Las Vegas," he said, and his smile was sharp enough to draw blood. "I hope you enjoy your stay." She fled. Back in her suite, Sienna lasted 10 minutes before the professional mask cracked apart. She sank onto the bed and let herself feel it, the anger she'd expected, the coldness she'd prepared for, but not the heat, not the way her body still responded to his presence like no time had passed, not the hunger in his eyes that matched the ache in her chest. He hated her. That much was clear. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was that she still loved him, even after everything, even knowing she had no right to. Her laptop sat on the desk, and Sienna pulled it toward her with shaking hands. She needed something familiar, something to ground her. She opened her chat application and scrolled to the conversation that had become her lifeline. Maxton, a client who'd become a friend and confidant. They'd started talking when he'd inquired about her services, and somehow it evolved into something more. Late-night conversations about dreams and regrets, confessions she'd never made to anyone else. He'd asked her out twice. Both times she'd gently declined, telling him her heart belonged to someone else. "I'm in Las Vegas for a job," she typed. "I'll be offline for a while." The message showed as read almost immediately, and she waited for a response. But the cursor just blinked, patient and empty, and no reply came. Sienna closed the laptop and lay back on the bed, staring at the ceiling. 6 weeks. She could survive 6 weeks. She had to. The morning arrived too quickly, dragging Sienna from restless sleep into a reality she still wasn't ready to face. The planning session was scheduled for 9. Sienna arrived early, setting up her materials with meticulous care. Fabric samples, flower catalogs, venue photographs in perfect order, as if controlling these details could give her control over the chaos of her emotions. Xavier arrived at exactly 9, punctual as always. The sight of him in a crisp white shirt with sleeves rolled to his forearms made her mouth go dry. She hated that she noticed, hated that her body responded like it had every right to. "Good morning," he said, his tone professional and distant. She returned, the greeting, with the same careful neutrality. They were reviewing the initial timeline when the door opened, and a woman walked in. This had to be Emily. Xavier's fiancée, Sienna thought, bracing herself. Emily was stunning, smiling as she walked closer. "Emily," Xavier said, and his voice softened. He crossed the room and pressed a kiss to Emily's cheek. It landed on Sienna like a physical blow, stealing her breath. She looked away quickly, focusing on the fabric samples with an intensity they didn't deserve. "You must be Sienna," Emily said, extending a perfectly manicured hand. "I've heard wonderful things about your work." Sienna forced herself to stand, to take Emily's hand, to smile like her heart wasn't breaking. "It's lovely to meet you. Congratulations on your engagement." "Thank you." Emily's smile didn't quite reach her eyes. "I'm so glad you could take on this project. Xavier speaks very highly of your talents." They settled, around the table, Emily beside Xavier, Sienna across from them. Sienna pulled out her tablet, bringing up the mood boards she'd worked on last night, when sleep proved impossible. "I thought we could start with the floral arrangements," Sienna said, projecting images onto the screen. "Based on the preliminary notes, I've put together options that would work beautifully with the venue aesthetic." She clicked through the first few options, explaining the reasoning behind each choice. Emily nodded politely, but Sienna could feel her attention drifting. It was Xavier who leaned forward, studying each image with an intensity that made Sienna's skin prickle. "What about peonies?" he asked, his voice carefully neutral. Sienna's hand stilled on her tablet. "Peonies, of course." "Peonies are beautiful," she managed. "They photograph well, and they're in season in early June. I remember someone once telling me that peonies were the perfect wedding flower," Xavier continued, his eyes meeting hers. "Something about how they represent prosperity and good fortune. And romance, of course." The air left Sienna's lungs. She'd told him that. Years ago, lying in bed together, planning a future that would never happen. "That's right," Sienna said, forcing herself to hold his gaze. "Peonies would be an excellent choice." Emily glanced between them. "Peonies sound lovely," she said. "Xavier has excellent taste. I trust his judgment completely." They continued through the session: color palettes, table settings, ceremony music. The champagne Xavier suggested was the same brand they'd toasted with the night he proposed. The song was the one Sienna had once hummed in their kitchen. Xavier contributed to everything, his voice calm and professional. But Sienna could feel his eyes on her constantly, watching for the moments when recognition flickered across her face. After an hour, Emily checked her watch and stood with an apologetic smile. "I'm so sorry, but I have meetings I need to get to." She looked at Xavier, touching his arm lightly. "Darling, you'll handle the rest, won't you? I trust you to approve whatever Sienna suggests." "Of course," Xavier said. He pulled Emily into a brief hug, and Sienna forced herself to look at her notes. Emily gathered her purse and headed for the door, pausing to smile at Sienna. "It was lovely meeting you. I'm sure everything will be perfect." And then she was gone, leaving Sienna alone with Xavier, and a tension so thick it felt like drowning. The silence stretched between them. Sienna kept her eyes on her tablet, scrolling through notes she wasn't actually reading. She could feel him watching her, could sense the shift in the air now that they were alone. "We should discuss the ceremony timeline," Sienna said finally, her voice too bright. "Should we?" Xavier's voice was low, dangerous. She looked up, and the expression on his face made her breath catch. The careful neutrality was gone, replaced by something raw and hungry and furious. "I have a meeting with the caterers," Sienna said quickly, standing and gathering her materials. "We can continue this later." "Running again." The words were soft, but cut like a blade. Sienna froze. "I'm not running. I'm being professional." "Is that what we're calling it?" Xavier stood, moving around the table. He stopped a few feet away, close enough that she could smell his cologne, see the tension in his jaw. "You've gotten very good at running, Sienna. 3 years of practice." "That's not fair," she whispered. "No," he agreed, his voice rough with barely contained emotion. "None of this is fair. But here we are anyway." The air between them crackled with electricity, with 3 years of unspoken words and a longing so fierce it felt like pain. She cleared her throat, breaking the spell. "I really do need to meet with the caterers. We can schedule another session for tomorrow." Xavier's jaw tightened, and for a moment she thought he might argue, but then he stepped back, giving her space, and nodded once. "Fine. Tomorrow at 9. Sienna fled the room before he could say anything else, but she could feel his eyes on her back as she left, burning into her like a brand she'd carry long after these 6 weeks were over. 1 week into Las Vegas, Sienna was at a flower shop reviewing arrangements when the assistant, Adam, asked her out. "I'd love to show you around Vegas sometime," he said. Under different circumstances, she might have been tempted, but her heart still belonged to someone else. "Maybe we could grab drinks after work sometime this week," Sienna said carefully. "Thursday works," Adam agreed. They finalized the floral order, and Sienna left the shop feeling lighter than she had in days. She returned to the hotel, spent the afternoon reviewing catering proposals, and tried not to think about Xavier. By early evening, she was back in her suite, reviewing her notes, when there was a sharp knock at her door. Sienna frowned, not expecting anyone, and opened it to find Xavier standing in the hallway, his expression thunderous. "We need to talk," he said, and before she could respond, he walked past her into the suite, like he had every right to be there. Sienna closed the door, her heart already racing. "What are you doing here?" Xavier turned to face her, tension rolling off him in waves. "Cancel your plans with the florist." The words hit her like a slap. "Excuse me." "Adam from the flower shop," Xavier said, his voice dangerously calm. "Cancel whatever date you have planned with him." Sienna stared at him, shock giving way to anger. "How do you even know about that?" "That's not important." He took a step closer. "What's important is that you're not going." "You don't get to tell me what to do," Sienna shot back. "I'm here to plan your wedding, Xavier. What I do in my free time is none of your business." His jaw clenched. "Everything you do while you're here is my business." "That's insane," she said, but her voice shook slightly. "You're engaged. You're getting married in 5 weeks. Why do you even care if I have drinks with someone?" "Why do I care?" Xavier laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You really want to know why I care, Sienna?" "Yes," she whispered. He closed the distance between them in 2 strides, and suddenly he was right there, towering over her. "Because the thought of you with someone else makes me want to burn the entire city down. Because I've spent 3 years trying to forget you and failing every single day. Because you're mine, whether you want to admit it or not." The words hung in the air between them, raw and devastating. Sienna's breath caught. "I'm not yours," she managed. "You're about to marry Emily." "Am I?" Something flickered in his eyes, too quick to read. "Yes," Sienna said, though doubt crept into her voice. "And I'm not your property, Xavier. You can't just show up here and demand I cancel my plans because you're feeling possessive. Watch me." His voice was low, dangerous, and heat flooded her body despite her anger. "This isn't fair," she said, hating the way her voice broke. "You blackmailed me into coming here. You're making me plan a wedding, using all our old plans, making me watch you marry someone else, and now you want to control who I spend time with?" His expression twisted into something agonized. "Leave you alone?" he repeated. "Sienna, I've spent 3 years trying to leave you alone. It doesn't work." "Then try harder," she whispered. Xavier's hands flexed at his sides, like he was physically restraining himself from reaching for her. "I won't watch you with someone else. I can't. You don't have a choice." "Don't I?" He pulled out his phone, and Sienna watched in growing horror as he made a call. "Yes, this is Xavier Whitmere. I need you to transfer Adam Cole from your Las Vegas location immediately." A pause. "Just make it happen and compensate him." "No," Sienna gasped, lunging forward to grab his arm, but he stepped back, ending the call. "It's done," he said simply. Fury crashed through her. "You can't do that. He didn't do anything wrong. He asked out someone who doesn't belong to him." "I don't belong to you!" The words came out as a shout. "You're engaged, Xavier. You're marrying Emily in 5 weeks. I'm not your property, and you don't get to ruin someone's career just because you're jealous." "Jealous?" He laughed, that same bitter sound. "Is that what you think this is? Sienna, what I feel for you goes so far beyond jealousy, it's not even in the same universe. I'm obsessed with you. I'm consumed by you. And yes, I'm fully aware that makes me sound insane. But I stopped caring about that a long time ago." The confession stole her breath. She searched his face, looking for some sign that he was lying, but all she saw was raw, painful honesty. "Why?" she whispered. "After everything I did to you, why?" Xavier's expression softened slightly. "Do you think I haven't asked myself that same question every day for 3 years? Do you think I haven't tried to hate you the way I should? Then why bring me here? Why force me to plan your wedding if you feel this way?" "Because I needed to see you," he said simply. "I needed to know if what I felt was real or just some twisted fantasy I'd built up in my head. And now I know." "Know what?" "That it's worse than I thought." He took a step back, running a hand through his hair. Your safety is my concern while you're here, Sienna. That's not negotiable. If that means I have to transfer every man who looks at you twice, then that's what I'll do. That's not protection, Sienna said. That's possession. I know. He met her eyes, and the naked want there made her knees weak. I told you I was obsessed. I wasn't exaggerating. Before she could respond, he turned and headed for the door. Xavier, wait. He paused, his hand on the doorknob, but didn't turn around. This has to stop, she said. Whatever this is between us, it can't continue. You're getting married. I know, he said quietly. You don't have to remind me. Then he left, closing the door softly behind him. Sienna stood in the middle of her suite, shaking and furious and more confused than she'd ever been in her life. Her phone chimed. She grabbed it, expecting it to be something work-related, but the name on the screen made her breath catch. Maxton. How's it going in Las Vegas? She stared at the message, her mind still reeling. Maxton, the person she'd been confiding in for months. It's complicated, she finally typed. How have you been? The response came quickly. Maxton. Thinking about you. Miss our conversations. Guilt washed over her. She'd been so consumed with Xavier that she hadn't given Maxton a second thought since arriving. Miss them too, she typed. Talk soon? Maxton. Whenever you're ready. I'm here. She set the phone down and sank onto the bed, exhaustion finally catching up with her. She fell asleep still dressed, her mind a tangle of Xavier's words and the weight of everything unspoken between them. 3 weeks into Las Vegas, and Sienna was reviewing the final seating chart when a knock sounded at her suite door. She opened it to find Emily standing in the hallway, looking polished and perfect in a cream-colored dress. Her smile was warm and genuine, and she held 2 coffee cups from the hotel cafe. Emily, Sienna said, unable to hide her surprise. I wasn't expecting you. I'm sorry to show up like this. Emily held out one of the coffee cups. Vanilla latte, right? Xavier mentioned it's your favorite. Sienna accepted the cup with a smile. Thank you. I've been a terrible client, Emily said, stepping inside. I wanted to see the progress, and... She paused. I need to get to my bridal fitting this afternoon. I was hoping you'd come with me. I could use another woman's opinion. The thought of going wedding dress shopping with the woman marrying Xavier felt like volunteering for her own execution. But Sienna forced a smile and nodded. Of course. I'd be happy to. They spent the next 20 minutes reviewing the progress. Emily was enthusiastic, asking thoughtful questions, clearly more engaged than she'd been in previous sessions. And then they were in a car heading to the boutique, Emily chatting easily about work while Sienna's stomach twisted with dread. 10 days before the wedding, 10 more days of this torture. The bridal boutique was elegant. Soft lighting, champagne, classical music. The consultant greeted them warmly, and within minutes, Emily was being escorted to the dressing area. Sienna settled into one of the chairs, trying to prepare herself. Miss Whitmere should be ready in just a moment, the consultant said with a warm smile. And then Emily stepped onto the platform. The ivory silk gown with delicate lace detailing was absolutely breathtaking. Emily looked like something from a fairy tale, and Sienna felt each word of Emily's excited commentary like a knife between her ribs. Xavier chose every detail, Emily said, smoothing her hands over the silk. He has such excellent taste, and he's been so invested in everything, double-checking every detail, making sure everything is perfect. That's just who he is. He cares so deeply about the people he loves. The people he loves. The boutique suddenly felt suffocating. Sienna excused herself to the restroom, locked the door, and gripped the sink as her carefully constructed composure shattered. The face in the mirror looked haunted. Dark circles, pale skin. 3 weeks of torture. She let herself feel it all. The jealousy burning through her veins, the heartbreak, the overwhelming loneliness of planning a celebration she could never be part of. She wanted to run, to book the first flight back to New York, but she couldn't, because he had evidence, because she was trapped. 10 more days. Just 10 more days. She splashed cold water on her face, reapplied lipstick with shaking hands, and returned with her professional mask in place. They finalized details and scheduled the final fitting for 2 days before the wedding. Back in her suite later, Sienna collapsed onto the bed, staring at the ceiling and waiting for Maxton's message. Her phone buzzed with a text. "Maxton, how are you holding up? You've been quiet lately?" The simple question made fresh tears spring to her eyes. Maxton had been her lifeline for months. "Not great," she typed back. "This job is harder than I expected." "Maxton, want to talk about it?" Sienna hesitated. She wanted to tell him everything. About Xavier, about the wedding, about the way her heart broke a little more with each passing day. "I keep thinking about quitting," she admitted. "Just walking away and refunding the client. But there's a critical issue stopping me. Something I did that I can't undo. And I'm so angry at myself for being trapped like this." The response came quickly. "Maxton, we all make mistakes, Sienna. The fact that you're trying to make it right says a lot about who you are." "Does it?" she typed. "Or does it just mean I'm a coward who can't face the consequences of my choices?" "Maxton, it means you're human. And whatever happened, whatever this critical issue is, I hope you know you deserve forgiveness, even if you can't forgive yourself yet." The kindness in his words made her chest ache. "Thank you," she sent back. "I don't know what I'd do without you." "Maxton, you'd survive. You're stronger than you think. But I'm glad I can help, even if it's just to listen." She set her phone down and pulled up her laptop, opening the master wedding timeline. June 5th stared back at her in bold letters. 10 days left. It would be beautiful. It would be perfect. It would be everything she and Xavier had once dreamed of, and she would have to stand there and watch it happen. The final venue walkthrough was scheduled for 2 in the afternoon, a last chance to confirm every detail before the wedding. Xavier had insisted both he and Emily attend, wanting to see the space exactly as it would be set up for the ceremony and reception. Sienna arrived early. The venue was stunning, an elegant ballroom with soaring ceilings and floor-to-ceiling windows. The events team had already begun setting up the ceremony space, and seeing it made her stomach twist. This was the exact setup she and Xavier had designed together years ago. Standing here now, seeing their shared dream become reality for someone else's wedding, felt like being slowly torn apart. Xavier arrived exactly on time, Emily beside him, looking polished and professional in a tailored dress. "Sienna," Xavier said by way of greeting, his voice carefully neutral. But his eyes, when they met hers, were anything but neutral. There was heat there, hunger barely leashed, and something that looked almost like desperation. "Xavier, Emily," Sienna forced a professional smile. "Thank you for coming. I thought we could walk through the ceremony setup first, then move to the reception space." They started at the entrance, Sienna explaining how guests would be greeted, where they'd be directed to sit. She tried to focus on logistics, but she was hyper-aware of Xavier's presence beside her. He stood too close, his arm occasionally brushing hers as they walked, each accidental touch sending electricity racing through her body. Emily's phone rang as they reached the ceremony space. She glanced at the screen and frowned. "I'm so sorry. I need to take this. Work emergency." "Of course," Sienna said. "Take your time." Emily stepped away, her voice already shifting into professional mode. Sienna watched her go, then made the mistake of looking at Xavier. The careful mask he'd been wearing had slipped slightly, and the raw intensity in his expression made her breath catch. They were standing at the front of the ceremony space, right where the bride and groom would exchange vows. The archway was already in place, decorated with the peonies Sienna had selected weeks ago. This was the exact spot where she and Xavier were supposed to have promised forever to each other. "The ceremony will start here," Sienna said, her voice not quite steady. She gestured to the archway, trying to focus on business. "The officiant will stand in the center, you and Emily on either side. The processional will—" "Stop," Xavier said quietly. Sienna looked at him, confused. "What?" "Just stop. For 1 minute. Stop pretending this is a normal wedding planning session." His jaw was tight, his hands clenched at his sides, like he was physically restraining himself from reaching for her. I don't know what you mean, Sienna said, but the lie felt hollow even to her own ears. Xavier took a step closer, closing the distance between them, and Sienna's heart started racing. Don't you? We're standing exactly where we were supposed to stand 3 years ago. This is our wedding, Sienna. Every detail, every choice. And you're acting like you don't even notice. I notice, she whispered. How could I not notice? The admission hung between them, heavy with everything they weren't saying. Xavier's eyes dropped to her mouth, and Sienna felt heat flood her body in response. The air felt too thick, charged with a tension that had been building for weeks. Are you happy? The question escaped before she could stop it. Xavier's expression twisted into something agonized. What? With Emily. Are you happy? Sienna's voice was barely audible. Do you love her? For a long moment, he didn't answer. He just stared at her with those dark eyes that had haunted her dreams for 3 years, and she watched a dozen different emotions flicker across his face. Pain, anger, longing, something that looked almost like desperation. Sienna, he started, but whatever he was going to say was cut off by Emily's voice. Sorry about that, Emily called, walking back toward them. Crisis averted. Where were we? Xavier stepped back so quickly, it was like he'd been burned, the professional mask slamming back into place. But Sienna had seen the crack in it, had glimpsed the raw emotion underneath, and she couldn't unsee it now. They continued the walk through with Emily present, and Sienna tried to focus on her explanations, but her mind kept replaying that moment. The way Xavier had looked at her, the way he'd avoided answering her question, the pain in his eyes. A new florist arrived to confirm the final arrangements, a cheerful woman named Rosa, who'd taken over after Adam had been mysteriously transferred. She walked through the ceremony space, nodding approvingly at the setup. This is going to be absolutely beautiful, Rosa said, beaming at Xavier and Emily. You two must be so excited. I can always tell when a couple is truly in love. There's just this energy, you know? Xavier's response was immediate and cold. Can we just confirm the delivery schedule? The change in his tone was so abrupt that everyone stopped. Rosa blinked, taken aback. Of course, Mr. Whitmere, I didn't mean to overstep. You didn't, Emily said smoothly, shooting Xavier a curious look. He's just nervous about the wedding. You know how grooms can be. But Sienna had caught it. The way Xavier's jaw had clenched at Rosa's words, the bitter edge in his voice, the flash of something dark and pained in his expression. This wasn't the response of a nervous groom. This was something else entirely. They finalized the details with Rosa and moved to the reception space. Emily stayed for another 20 minutes before another work call pulled her away, leaving Sienna alone with Xavier once again. The silence between them was suffocating. They stood in the middle of the reception ballroom, surrounded by tables waiting to be dressed in linens and centerpieces, and Sienna felt like she might explode from the pressure building in her chest. Why are you really doing this? The question came out sharp, desperate. What is this wedding actually about, Xavier? He turned to look at her, and the expression on his face made her breath catch. There was no mask now, no careful control. Just raw, devastating honesty. You want to know what this is about? Yes, she whispered. Xavier closed the distance between them in 3 strides, and suddenly he was right there, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating off his body, see the barely restrained hunger in his eyes. It's about watching you realize what you gave up. It's about making you feel even a fraction of what I felt when I woke up and you were gone. It's about... He stopped abruptly, his hand reaching up like he was going to touch her face, then clenching into a fist and dropping back to his side. The almost touch left Sienna aching for contact, her skin burning where his hand would have been. It's about what? She breathed. Nothing. Xavier's voice was rough. Forget I said anything. But Sienna couldn't forget. She took a step closer, closing the distance he'd tried to create, and watched his pupils dilate in response. You can't do this. You can't say things like that and then just walk away. I can't? His laugh was bitter. Watch me, Sienna. I've gotten very good at walking away from things I want. The words hung between them, loaded with meaning. Sienna's heart was racing. her body responding to his proximity in ways she couldn't control. She could smell his cologne, familiar and devastating. Could see the tension in his jaw, the rapid pulse at his throat. Could feel the electricity crackling in the air between them. "Xavier," she whispered, and his name on her lips sounded like a prayer and a curse all at once. His control snapped. His hand shot out and wrapped around her wrist, pulling her close, and suddenly they were pressed together, breathing hard, staring at each other with 3 years of longing burning between them. Sienna could feel his heart hammering against her chest, could see the war playing out in his expression. "I should let you go," he said, but his grip on her wrist tightened. "Then let go," Sienna challenged, even as her free hand came up to rest against his chest. For a long, agonizing moment, neither of them moved. They just stood there, inches apart, breathing each other's air, balanced on the edge of something that would change everything. Xavier's eyes dropped to her mouth, and Sienna's lips parted in unconscious invitation. He leaned in, and she tilted her face up, and the space between them disappeared to nothing, until a door slammed somewhere in the venue, the sound echoing through the ballroom like a gunshot. They sprang apart, both breathing hard, staring at each other with wild eyes. "Mr. Whitmere," a staff member's voice called from the entrance. "Sorry to interrupt, but we need your signature on the final contract." Reality crashed back over them like ice water. Xavier stepped back, running a hand through his hair, his expression tortured. "I'll be right there," he called back, his voice remarkably steady, considering he looked like he might come apart at the seams. He looked at Sienna one more time, and the longing in his eyes was so fierce it made her chest ache. "This can't happen," he said quietly. "Why not?" Sienna heard herself ask. "Because you're not mine to kiss anymore." The words came out broken, devastated. "You made that choice 3 years ago." "And you chose Emily," Sienna shot back, anger and hurt mixing into something explosive. Xavier's jaw clenched. "Did I?" Before she could process what that meant, he turned and walked away, leaving her standing alone in the reception ballroom with her heart racing and her mind spinning. June 2nd arrived with a finality that made Sienna's hands shake as she reviewed her checklist. She couldn't stop thinking about what had happened at the venue walkthrough, the way Xavier had pulled her close, the almost kiss that still haunted her dreams, the cryptic questions that made no sense. Did I choose Emily? What the hell did that mean? The final preparation meeting was scheduled for 10 in the morning in the hotel's conference room. Every vendor had confirmed. Every detail had been finalized. All that remained was one last review with the bride and groom. Sienna arrived early, spreading out her materials. Her tablet displayed the master timeline, every minute of June 5th accounted for. The ceremony at 4, the cocktail hour at 5:30, the reception at 7. It was all there, perfect and organized, and completely surreal. Emily arrived exactly on time, but something was different. She stood in the doorway for a moment, just watching Sienna with an expression that was hard to read. "Emily," Sienna said, forcing a smile. "Please, come in. I have everything ready for our final review." Emily entered slowly, her heels clicking on the floor. She was impeccably dressed as always, but there was a tension in her shoulders that Sienna had never seen before. "Sienna, before we start, I need to tell you something." Sienna's heart skipped. "Is everything okay?" "I can't make it to the final dress fitting this afternoon." The words came out rushed, almost apologetic. "I know we scheduled it, and I know how important it is, but something's come up, and I trust Xavier to handle it." The statement hung in the air, absurd and impossible. "Emily, it's your final fitting, 3 days before your wedding. You can't miss it." "I know how it sounds." Emily's eyes were still fixed on Sienna with that strange intensity. "But Xavier knows what I like. He'll make sure everything is perfect. He always does." Every instinct Sienna had developed over years of wedding planning screamed that this was wrong. No bride missed her final dress fitting. No bride was this detached from her own wedding. "What's going on?" Sienna asked quietly. "And please don't tell me nothing, because I know that's not true." Emily's expression softened, and for just a moment, she looked almost sad. "Maybe you should ask Xavier." She moved toward the door, then paused. I don't have the answer to your question. Before Sienna could respond, Emily was gone, leaving her alone with a growing sense that everything she thought she knew about this wedding was a carefully constructed lie. Sienna sat in the empty conference room for a long time, her mind racing. Then she pulled out her phone and texted Xavier. We need to talk. Now. The response came within seconds. My suite in 20 minutes. Xavier's suite was on the top floor. Sienna had never been here before, had carefully maintained professional boundaries, despite the electricity that crackled between them during every planning session. Those boundaries felt meaningless now. She knocked, her heart hammering. Xavier opened the door immediately, like he'd been waiting. He looked different than she'd ever seen him. No suit jacket, sleeves rolled up, hair slightly disheveled, and his eyes, God, his eyes were wild. Something that looked like barely controlled desperation. The sight of him made her chest ache, with a longing so fierce it felt like pain. Come in, he said, his voice rough. Sienna stepped inside, and he closed the door behind her with a finality that made her breath catch. Is there even a wedding? The question exploded out of her, fueled by 6 weeks of confusion and pain. Are you actually marrying Emily? Xavier's jaw clenched. What makes you ask that? Don't. Sienna's voice shook. Don't deflect. Don't give me some careful non-answer. Just tell me the truth. Are you marrying Emily on June 5th? For a long moment, he didn't answer. The silence stretched between them, heavy with everything they'd left unsaid. Yes, he said finally. There's a wedding on June 5th. The confirmation hit her like a physical blow. Pain lanced through her chest. Of course there was. She'd planned every detail. She pressed a hand to her chest, trying to hold herself together, but she could feel the cracks spreading. But not to Emily. Sienna's breath stopped. The world tilted sideways. What? There's a wedding, Xavier repeated, his voice barely above a whisper. But I'm not marrying Emily. Then who? Understanding crashed over her like a wave. Her mind raced, connecting dots she'd been too blind or too afraid to see. The familiar flowers, the date that should have been theirs, the music, Emily's distance, Xavier's intensity. Oh, God. No, that's insane. Her heart was racing so fast, she felt dizzy. This couldn't be real. But even as she tried to deny it, hope bloomed in her chest, terrifying and painful. Is it? Xavier took a step toward her, and she stumbled back until she hit the wall. He kept coming until he was right there. You've been planning your own wedding, Sienna. Every detail, every choice. It's ours. It's always been ours. The words hit her like a physical blow, and suddenly she couldn't breathe. This was too much, too big, too impossible. That's not possible, she whispered, but her voice broke, betraying how desperately she wanted it to be true. Emily, she tried. Is my executive assistant, Xavier said, and there was no apology in his voice. She agreed to play the role because she's watched me destroy myself over you for 3 years, and thought maybe this insane plan would finally give me some kind of closure. Sienna felt like the ground had disappeared beneath her feet. She pressed back against the wall, needing something solid. You're lying. This is some kind of sick joke. Do I look like I'm joking? His voice cracked, raw with emotion. Do you have any idea what it's been like? 6 years we were together, Sienna. 6 years of building something I thought was unbreakable. I proposed. You said yes. We got engaged. We planned our entire future together. And then, you disappeared. You took what we'd built, and you vanished, like none of it meant anything to you. The pain in his voice made tears spring to her eyes. She could hear it now, all the anguish he'd been carrying for 3 years. Xavier. His name came out as a sob. No. He cut her off, his control finally shattering. You don't get to say my name like that. Not yet. Not until you understand what you did to me. I woke up that morning and you were gone. Just gone. No explanation, no goodbye. Just a ring on the nightstand and a note that said you were sorry. Do you know what that did to me? Sienna was crying now, tears streaming down her face. She could see it all from his perspective. The nightmare of waking up to find the person he loved had vanished. I woke up expecting to see you beside me, Xavier continued, his voice breaking. Instead, I found an empty apartment and a ring. I called you 100 times that first day. And you never answered. You just let me think I'd somehow destroyed the best thing in my life. I was terrified, Sienna sobbed, the words ripping out of her. She wrapped her arms around herself. I was so scared, Xavier. I didn't know what to do. Then you should have told me. The words came out as a roar. You should have talked to me. I loved you, Sienna. I would have done anything for you. If something was wrong, if you were scared, I was right there. I was always right there for you. I know, she sobbed, pressing her hands over her face. I know you were. God, I know. Then why? His voice broke completely. Why did you run? What did I do wrong? I've spent 3 years asking myself that question. 3 years trying to figure out what I could have done differently, what I should have seen, how I failed you so completely that you couldn't even trust me enough to tell me you were leaving. Nothing. You did nothing wrong. Sienna forced herself to look at him, through her tears. It was all me. I was broken and scared, and I didn't think I deserved you. I didn't think I was good enough for you, for the future you wanted. And I was too much of a coward to stay, and let you see how inadequate I really was. The admission hung between them, raw and honest. So you left, Xavier said, his voice quieter now but no less painful. You ignored the 6 years we dated and left. You took what we'd built together, and you started a life without me. His laugh was bitter. For 3 years I've been trying to understand, trying to hate you the way I should. But I can't. I've tried everything, Sienna. I've dated other women. I've thrown myself into work. I've done everything possible to forget you. And none of it works. You're in my head every minute of every day. You're in my dreams. You're everywhere I look. I see something beautiful, and I want to show you. Something goes right at work, and I reach for my phone to tell you. I'm at a restaurant, and I think about what you would order. You've been gone for 3 years, and you're still the first thing I think about when I wake up, and the last thing I think about before I sleep. Each word was a dagger to Sienna's heart, because she knew exactly what he meant. Stop, Sienna whispered, because hearing him say it out loud was too painful. Why? Because the truth hurts? He was breathing hard. You want to know the real truth? I forgave you. The moment you left, even as I was reading that pathetic excuse for an explanation, even as I was looking at our designs knowing you'd taken them, I'd already forgiven you. Because that's how pathetic I am. That's how completely you destroyed me. I can't hate you. I can't even be properly angry at you. All I can do is love you and miss you and wish desperately that you'd trusted me enough to stay. The confession shattered something in Sienna's chest. He'd forgiven her. 3 years ago, he'd already forgiven her. I don't love you anymore, Sienna said desperately, needing to create some distance. The lie tasted bitter, wrong in every possible way. Xavier's eyes flashed dangerously, and he closed the distance in one stride. Liar! I don't. I moved on. But her voice broke, betraying her, and fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. You're terrified to admit it, he said, and he was so close now she could feel his breath on her face. You're scared that if you tell the truth, if you admit you still feel this thing between us, it will consume you the way it's consumed me. You're scared that if you let yourself love me again, I'll see all those insecurities you think make you inadequate, and I'll leave. So you're lying to both of us, pretending you don't feel what I know you feel. Sienna shook her head, but she couldn't speak. You want to know how I know you're lying? Xavier's voice dropped too, something soft and devastating. Because I'm Maxton, Sienna. I've been Maxton this whole time. Every late-night conversation, every confession, every time you told me, that your heart belonged to someone else. Every time you said you were still in love with a man you left and broke. I know exactly how you feel, because you've been telling me for months. The revelation hit her like a bomb. Her knees went weak, and she would have fallen if Xavier hadn't caught her, his hands on her arms the only thing keeping her upright. The world spun, her mind racing to assimilate every conversation she'd had with Maxton, every confession, every vulnerable moment. It had all been Xavier. No, she gasped, but it came out weak, broken. That's not, you can't, I needed to know, Xavier said, and there was no apology in his voice. Before I went through with this wedding, before I put myself through the torture of having you here, I needed to know if what I felt was one-sided, or if you still... He stopped, his jaw clenching. I needed to know if there was any hope, if the woman I loved was still in there somewhere, still feeling even a fraction of what I felt. Sienna was shaking, her mind trying to process what he'd done. All those conversations, all those confessions about missing someone, about feeling broken, about wanting to go back and fix her mistakes. She'd told Maxton, told Xavier, everything. You pretended to be someone else and deceived me, she said, but the words came out weak. Yes, he didn't deny it. His hands tightened on her arms. I deceived you. I blackmailed you. I made you plan a wedding designed to break your heart. And I'm not sorry, Sienna, because now I know the truth. You still want me. You still love me. You're just too scared to admit it. You're obsessed. You can't stay away from me, she accused. Completely. His voice was rough, raw with honesty. Utterly and completely obsessed with you. I told you that weeks ago when I had Adam transferred. Did you think I was exaggerating? I meant every word. I am obsessed with you. I think about you constantly. I've spent 3 years building my entire life around the ghost of what we had. I've sent you clients. I've tracked your career. I've made sure you were successful even after you took our work, because I couldn't stop myself from taking care of my baby girl, even when you didn't want me to. Each confession made Sienna's chest tighter, made the carefully constructed walls she'd built around her heart crumble. This is insane, she said. You can't plan a fake wedding and blackmail me into being here and expect me to just admit you still love me, Xavier demanded, and his voice was fierce now, almost desperate. That's all I need. Just admit it, Sienna. Tell me I'm not crazy. Tell me this thing between us is real. Tell me you feel even a fraction of what I feel, and I'll... He stopped. Just say it. Please. The please broke her. That single word, desperate and pleading, from a man who never begged for anything. Sienna felt the last of her defenses shatter, and suddenly, she couldn't hold it back anymore. The tears came harder, her whole body shaking with sobs she'd been holding back for 3 years. I can't, she gasped. Xavier, I can't say it. If I say it, if I admit it, then it's real. And I say it anyway. He moved closer, one hand coming up to cup her face, his thumb wiping away tears that just kept falling. The touch was gentle, tender, in a way that made her want to break apart completely. Be brave, Sienna. For once in 3 years, be brave enough to tell me the truth. She looked up at him through her tears, at this man who was looking at her now, like she was the only thing in the world that mattered. And she felt something in her chest crack wide open, all fear and guilt and self-protection spilling out. I never stopped, she said, the words ripping out of her like they'd been clawed from her chest. God help me, Xavier. I never stopped loving you. Not for a single day. Not for a single moment. I tried. I tried so hard to forget you, to move on, to build a life without you. But you're in everything I do. Every event I plan, I think about what you would say. Every success I have, I want to tell you. Every night I go to sleep alone, and I miss you so much, it feels like I can't breathe. I've been in love with you for 3 years, and I've been so scared to admit it because I don't deserve you. I destroyed us. I took everything we built, and I ran. And I have no right to still love you, but I do. I love you so much, it's killing me. I love you so much, it's killing me. The confession left her raw and exposed, stripped of every defense. She stood there shaking, tears streaming down her face, waiting for him to say something. Xavier's eyes were shining. His jaw worked like he was trying to speak but couldn't. His hands on her face trembled. And that's when she understood. He'd been waiting 3 years to hear those words. 3 years of hoping and breaking and rebuilding himself around the ghost of her. She couldn't wait anymore. She leaned forward, pulled his face down, and kissed him. Xavier responded back. It was fierce and hungry. There, years of longing and pain and love compressed into a single moment. His hands cupped her face, tilting her head back as he claimed her mouth with an intensity that made her knees weak. She'd forgotten this, how he tasted, how he felt, how being close to him erased everything else. They had done more than this before, in his Miami apartment where they'd spent an entire winter together, in her New York studio where the bed barely fit, but they'd made it work, in hotel rooms across Europe when they were young and reckless and convinced they'd found forever. The familiarity of it made her chest ache, like coming home after years away, like muscle memory her body had never forgotten. She poured everything into that kiss, every regret, every moment of longing, every night she'd spent missing him, and he met her with equal desperation. When they finally broke apart, Xavier pressed his forehead against hers. "Say it again," he demanded, his voice rough. "I love you," Sienna whispered, and the words felt like freedom. "I love you." I never stopped. "I'm so sorry, Xavier. I'm so sorry for everything." They stood there for a long moment, wrapped around each other, both of them shaking with the weight of what had just happened. Xavier pulled back slightly, just enough to look into her eyes, his hand still cradling her face. "You don't have to agree to the wedding right now," he said, his voice soft but steady. "I know this is overwhelming. I know I've put you through hell these past 6 weeks. All I needed to hear was that you still love me, that you're willing to try again. That's enough for now. I don't care about the money or the ceremony." Sienna's breath hitched, fresh tears spilling over. "Xavier, I'm giving you time," he continued, his thumbs stroking her cheeks. "As much time as you need to think about this, about us. But you have to promise me something." "What?" she whispered. "Promise me you won't run." His voice cracked slightly. "Promise me that no matter how scared you get, no matter what doubts creep in, you'll stay and talk to me. You'll let me fight for us, instead of disappearing in the middle of the night." "I promise," Sienna said, the words coming easier than she expected. "I won't run." "Good." Xavier's grip tightened slightly. "Because I won't let you anyway. I'll follow you to the ends of the earth if I have to. I'm not losing you again, Sienna. Not ever." But then reality crashed back, in, cold and devastating. Because there was something Xavier didn't know, something that made this entire situation so much worse. Sienna pulled back, her hand still gripping his shirt, and looked up at him with tears still streaming down her face. "Wait," she said, her voice shaking. "Xavier, wait. There's something you need to know. Something I should have told you 3 years ago. Something that explains why I ran." Xavier's expression shifted, hope and fear warring in his eyes. His hands tightened on her face. "What?" Sienna took a shaky breath, knowing that what she was about to say would either save them or destroy them completely. "I can't keep breaking your heart," she said, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. "You need to know the truth about why I left, about who made me leave, because it wasn't just me being scared. Someone told me I had to go. Someone made it very clear that I would never be welcome in your life." "What are you talking about?" Xavier's voice was sharp now. Sienna met his eyes, seeing her own pain reflected back at her, and forced herself to say the words that would change everything. "Your stepmother," she whispered. "The day after we got engaged, she came to see me. And she made it very clear that staying with you would destroy everything you'd worked for." The words hung in the air between them, and Sienna watched Xavier's expression transform, but not into the devastation she'd expected. Something darker flickered across his face, something possessive and fierce and absolutely unhinged. "She told you to leave?" His voice was too calm, the kind of calm that came before a storm. "Catherine came to you the day after I proposed and told you that you needed to walk away." Sienna nodded, tears streaming down her face. "She said your business was at a critical point, that investors were watching you, that your reputation mattered more than ever. She told me there were rumors about us, about how fast we moved, and a wedding wasn't the priority." Xavier's hand slid from her face to her shoulders, his grip firm, but not painful. His expression had gone dangerously still. She said that to you? She made it sound like staying would destroy your credibility, Sienna continued, the words tumbling out now that she'd started. Like people were questioning your judgment for mixing business with romance. She said the board members were talking, that your father's partners had concerns, that I was becoming a distraction when you needed to be focused at 25. And you believed her. She showed me proof, Xavier. Sienna's voice cracked. Articles from gossip columns speculating about us. Screenshots of comments from business forums questioning whether you were distracted by the relationship. She had actual evidence that people were judging you for being with me. She made it all seem so real. Xavier's jaw clenched so hard, she could see the muscle jumping. What else did she say? She said, if I really loved you, I'd step back for a while before I became a liability to everything you'd built. That you were 25 and brilliant and on the verge of something incredible. And I was the thing holding you back. Sienna pressed her hands over her face. She made it sound like staying was selfish, and I should go build my own empire, or she would make my life full of hell. So you left. His voice was rough, stripped raw. You left because you thought you were protecting me. I thought I was doing the right thing, Sienna sobbed. I thought if I just disappeared, you could focus on your career without people questioning every decision you made because of me. I thought I was saving you from having to choose between me and everything you'd worked for. Jesus Christ. Xavier pulled her against him suddenly, his arms wrapping around her so tightly she could barely breathe. But she didn't want him to let go. She wanted to stay right here, in this moment, where he was holding her like she was something precious, instead of pushing her away like she deserved. You thought you were protecting me. This whole time, you thought you were doing the right thing. His voice dropped, becoming almost a whisper. My father asked about you for months after you left. He loved you, Sienna. He'd ask when you were coming to dinner, if you were okay, why you weren't returning his calls. I had to tell him we broke up. Had to watch him lose you, too. The confession shattered something in her chest. She'd destroyed more than just their relationship. She'd taken herself away from Richard, who'd welcomed her into his family like a daughter. I was so scared, Xavier. She threatened me, Sienna whispered against his chest. So I ran, and I took our designs and our plans because they were the only pieces of you I had left. And I built something with them because building something felt better than falling apart completely. Xavier's hand slid into her hair, tilting her head back so she had to look at him. The intensity in his eyes made her breath catch. You didn't leave because you stopped loving me. I never stopped loving you, Sienna said, the confession pulling itself from somewhere deep in her chest. Not for a single day, not for a single moment. You were manipulated. His voice had changed, gone dark and possessive. Someone took advantage of your fear and your love for me and used it to steal you away. Someone looked at what we had and decided they had the right to destroy it by making you think you were protecting me. The shift in his tone made something in Sienna's chest ease, even as fresh tears spilled over. He wasn't looking at her with disappointment or anger. He was looking at her like she was something that had been taken from him. Something he was claiming back. I should have told you, Sienna said. I should have trusted you enough to... Yes, you should have. He didn't let her finish. But that's done. We can't change the past. What we can change is what happens next. Before Sienna could process what he meant, Xavier pulled out his phone. His arm stayed around her waist, keeping her close as he made the call. Dad, his voice was clipped, controlled fury barely leashed. Catherine went to Sienna 3 years ago with fake evidence and convinced her that staying with me would destroy my reputation. She manipulated her into leaving. Did you know that? Sienna could hear Richard's shocked response even from where she stood. No, I'm not coming to discuss it, Xavier continued, his grip on Sienna tightening possessively. You're dealing with her. I don't care how. She can stay in the family if she behaves. But she needs to understand that if she ever comes near Sienna again, if she ever tries to interfere in our lives again, I'll destroy whatever standing she has left. Make that very clear." He paused, listening. "Because I'm staying with my woman. The woman your wife manipulated and lied to. The woman I'm marrying. So handle Catherine, Dad. Make sure she understands her place in this family now, because Sienna is my priority, and anyone who tries to come between us again will regret it." He ended the call and turned his full attention back to Sienna, and the intensity in his gaze made her knees weak. This was the Xavier she remembered, commanding, decisive, absolutely certain. But there was something new there, too, something darker and more possessive than she'd ever seen. "Now," he said, his voice soft, but leaving no room for argument. "You and me. We're talking about what happens next." "I should probably go back to my suite," Sienna said weakly. "Give you time to process all of this." "No." The single word was absolute. "You're not leaving. You're not going anywhere. You're staying right here with me." "Xavier, you need space to think." "I've had 3 years of space, Sienna. 3 years of thinking and processing and trying to understand. I'm done with space. I'm done with distance. I'm done with time apart." His hands framed her face, forcing her to meet his eyes. "You ran once because someone manipulated you into thinking it was the right thing to do. I'm not giving you the chance to second-guess this and run again." The declaration should have terrified her, should have felt like too much, too fast, too intense. But instead, something in Sienna's chest eased. For 3 years she'd been drowning in guilt and shame and the weight of her own choices. And here was Xavier, looking at her like she was the only thing in the world that mattered, telling her she wasn't allowed to run anymore. "I don't know if I can do this," she whispered. "What if people in the company think—" "We are 28, Sienna. I don't care what people think." Xavier cut her off, his voice fierce. "The only opinion that matters is mine, and my opinion is that you're exactly where you belong, with me. End of discussion." "How can you be so sure?" "Because you're mine." The words were simple, absolute, devastating in their certainty. "You've been mine since the day we met. You were mine when we got engaged. You were mine when you left. You were mine for the last 3 years, even though you were halfway across the country. And you're mine right now. That doesn't change anything." Sienna felt something break open in her chest, 3 years of guilt and self-hatred spilling out in a sob that made her whole body shake. Xavier pulled her against him immediately, one hand in her hair, the other wrapped around her waist like he could hold her together through sheer force of will. "I'm so sorry," she gasped against his chest. "I'm so sorry I didn't trust you. I'm so sorry I left you. I'm so sorry I wasted 3 years we could have had together." "I know you are." His voice was softer now, but no less intense. "But you need to understand something, baby. I'm not letting you apologize for the rest of our lives. You made the best decision you could with the information you had. That's not a sin. That's just being human. But I took what we built together. I used our work to start my business without your permission." "I know." His hand tightened in her hair. "I've always known you used what we created. And I let you, because watching you succeed with our work, even without me, was the only way I could still be part of your life." Sienna pressed her hands over her face, overwhelmed by the weight of his words, by the realization of how completely she'd underestimated what they meant to each other. "I don't know what to say." "Then don't say anything." Xavier gently pulled her hands away from her face, lacing their fingers together. "Just listen. You're staying in Las Vegas. You're not running back to New York. You're not disappearing in the middle of the night. You're staying right here where I can see you, where I can take care of you, where you can't convince yourself that you don't deserve this." "Xavier, this is crazy. Completely crazy," he agreed. "Absolutely insane. But I've spent 3 years being reasonable and patient and giving you space. I'm done with that. I'm done pretending I'm okay with you being anywhere but here. I'm done acting like I can just move on and find someone else when you're the only person I've ever wanted. We'll work through it together." Xavier's forehead pressed against hers, his breath warm on her lips. "But you don't get to run. That's not an option anymore. You promised me, remember?" "I remember." "Good." His hand slid down to her waist, pulling her flush against him. Because I need you to understand something, Sienna. I'm not the man you left 3 years ago. I'm not going to be patient or understanding, or give you space when you get scared. I'm going to be possessive and demanding and completely unreasonable about keeping you close. If that's too much for you, tell me now. Sienna looked up at him. It's not too much, she whispered. I think it's exactly what I need. Something shifted in his expression. Possession and relief and pure male satisfaction. Say it again. I need you, she breathed. He kissed her then, claiming and fierce and utterly inevitable. Xavier's hands tangled in her hair, tilting her head back as he took her mouth with an intensity that made her knees buckle. This wasn't the desperate reunion kiss from before. This was a promise, a brand, a vow that she was his, and he was never letting go. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Xavier rested his forehead against hers. Stay tonight. Stay every night. Stay until you believe this is real. Okay, Sienna breathed. Okay, I'll stay. Good. His arms tightened around her. Because I'm not letting you go. Not tonight. Not tomorrow. Not ever again. They stood there for a long moment, wrapped around each other, processing everything that had just happened. Sienna could feel Xavier's heart pounding against her chest, could feel the tension slowly draining from his body as he held her. I love you, she said quietly, needing him to hear it again. I know. Xavier pressed a kiss to her temple. I'm here now, Sienna said, and I'm not leaving. I promise. I'm going to hold you to that. His arms tightened around her. Every single day, I'm going to remind you of that promise, and every single day, I'm going to prove to you that you made the right choice by staying. Sienna woke to the smell of coffee and something sweet. Pastries, maybe. For a disorienting moment, she thought she might be dreaming. The events of last night came rushing back. The revelations, the kiss, the promise not to run. She sat up, taking in Xavier's suite in the morning light, floor-to-ceiling windows, sleek furniture, and Xavier, standing at the doorway with a tray, watching her with an expression that made her breath catch. Good morning, he said, his voice soft. Is that? Sienna's throat tightened. Did you make breakfast? I had it brought up. He crossed to the bed, setting the tray on her lap with careful precision. Coffee, exactly how she liked it. But I wanted to bring it to you myself. The gesture was so simple, so domestic, and yet it made her eyes sting with unexpected tears. This was the Xavier she remembered, the one who'd surprised her with coffee on lazy Sunday mornings. Thank you, she whispered. Xavier sat on the edge of the bed, watching her with an intensity that made her skin warm. Eat. Then we talk. They ate in comfortable silence, and when the tray was empty, Xavier took her hand and led her to the balcony. The terrace overlooked the Las Vegas skyline, the morning sun painting everything gold. Xavier pulled her against him, his arms wrapping around her waist from behind, and they stood there, breathing in the quiet morning. You're thinking too loud, Xavier murmured against her hair. I can practically hear you spiraling. I'm not spiraling. Liar. His hand splayed across her stomach, possessive even in the stillness. What are you freaking out about? Sienna leaned back against him, letting his warmth ground her. This. Us. Everything that happened yesterday. I keep waiting for reality to crash back in and ruin it. Reality already crashed in. His voice was rough against her ear. We dealt with it. Now we move forward. It can't be that simple. It is that simple. He turned her in his arms, forcing her to face him. The morning light made his eyes look almost golden. You love me. I love you. Everything else is just details we'll figure out together. Before Sienna could argue, his phone buzzed. Xavier pulled it from his pocket, his expression tightening as he read the message. My father, he said. Catherine's agreed to back off completely. She'll stay in the family, but she understands that if she ever interferes with us again, she'll lose whatever standing she has left. Dad made it very clear where his loyalties lie. The news should have brought relief, but instead, Sienna felt a complicated mix of emotions. I never wanted to cause problems in your family. You didn't, he cut her off firmly. Catherine's choices caused problems. Her manipulation, her lies, her interference. You were a victim of that. Don't take responsibility for her actions. But no. Xavier's hand cupped her face, his thumb brushing her cheekbone. No guilt. No taking blame for things that aren't your fault. That's a rule, starting now. If you want to acknowledge that you should have trusted me 3 years ago, fine. But you don't get to feel guilty for being manipulated by someone who deliberately set out to destroy us. The command in his voice sent a shiver through her. This was the Xavier she'd fallen in love with. Confident, decisive, absolutely certain of what he wanted. But there was something new there, too. A possessive edge that made her feel claimed in a way that should have been frightening, but somehow felt safe. Okay, she said softly. No guilt. Good. He pressed a kiss to her forehead. Now come inside. We have things to discuss. 20 minutes later, Sienna found herself curled up on Xavier's couch, wrapped in one of his shirts, watching him pour coffee into 2 mugs. The normalcy of it made her throat tight. Here. He handed her a mug, prepared exactly the way she liked it, and settled beside her. Now we talk about what happens next. Sienna wrapped her hands around the warm mug, needing something to hold on to. What do you mean? I mean we need to figure out where we go from here. Xavier's arm draped across the back of the couch, his fingers playing with the ends of her hair. I told you last night you're staying if you chose to, but we need to talk about the rest. The rest? The wedding. His eyes were steady on hers. Our wedding. The one we should have had 3 years ago. Sienna's heart stuttered. Xavier, we can't just... We need time to rebuild trust, to make sure this is really solid, to prove that we can handle whatever challenges come our way. I know what I want. His voice was absolutely certain. I've known for 3 years, but you need time to believe it, to trust that this is real, and that I'm not going anywhere. So here's what's going to happen. He shifted closer, and Sienna felt the intensity of his focus like a physical touch. You're going to choose a date, Xavier said. Not me. You're going to tell me when you're ready to be my wife. A month from now, 3 months, 6 months. I don't care. But you're going to give me a date, Sienna. Something real. Something that proves you're not running and that you believe in us. You want me to choose when we get married? The question came out breathless. I want you to choose when you're ready to stop being scared and start believing that you deserve this. His hand slid to the back of her neck, his thumb stroking the sensitive skin there. But understand something. You are going to marry me. The only question is when you're ready to admit that this is what you want, too. The certainty in his voice should have been overwhelming, should have felt like too much pressure. But instead, Sienna felt something ease in her chest. He wasn't asking if she wanted to marry him. He was asking when, like it was inevitable, like they'd always been heading toward this moment, and 3 years apart was just a painful detour. What if I need a lot of time? She asked, testing him. Then you take it. His eyes never left hers. I'll wait as long as you need. But you're not doing it from New York. You're staying here, with me, where I can prove to you every single day that you belong here. That being with me won't damage my reputation or distract me from my career or any of the other lies Catherine fed you. I have a business in New York. We can also expand it here. We can be partners, whatever you want. Or you can stay here where I can see you, where I can take care of you, where you can't spiral into doubt when you get scared. That's really controlling, Sienna pointed out, but her voice lacked heat. I know. He didn't look even slightly apologetic. I told you last night I was going to be unreasonable about this. I meant it. I lost you once because I gave you too much space to spiral and doubt. I'm not making that mistake again. A knock on the door interrupted them. Xavier pressed a quick kiss to her temple before getting up to answer it, and Sienna tried to collect herself. This conversation was moving fast, spinning her around until she didn't know which way was up. But underneath the dizziness was something else, a relief so profound it made her want to cry. She didn't have to be strong anymore, didn't have to pretend she had all the answers. Xavier was here, solid and certain, and absolutely unwilling to let her run. And maybe that was exactly what she needed. "Emily," Xavier said, and Sienna looked up to see his assistant standing in the doorway, a knowing smile on her face. "Good morning," Emily said, her eyes moving between them with obvious amusement. "I see we've moved past the fake wedding face." "You knew?" Sienna asked, torn between embarrassment and gratitude. "This whole time you knew it was all a setup?" "Of course I knew." Emily came in and settled into one of the chairs, completely at ease. "I'm the one who helped him plan it. Someone had to make sure he didn't completely lose his mind with this scheme." "I think it's too late for that," Sienna said, shooting Xavier a look. "Definitely too late," he agreed cheerfully, sitting back down beside her and immediately pulling her close. "I lost my mind about 3 years ago. I'm just leaning into it now." Emily laughed. "For what it's worth, Sienna, I think this is good for him. He's been unbearable for the last 3 years. Workaholic, intense, completely impossible to be around. At least now he'll be impossible about something other than quarterly reports." "Thanks for the vote of confidence," Xavier said dryly. "You're welcome." Emily's expression softened. "Seriously, though, I'm glad you're staying. He deserves to be happy. And you clearly make him happy, even when you're making him crazy." The easy acceptance made Sienna's eyes sting with unexpected tears. "Thank you. For helping him. For not judging me for what I did." "We all make mistakes," Emily said gently. Then her expression shifted, became more serious. 4 years ago, I watched the man I loved choose his career over me. And I let him because I was too scared to fight. She met Sienna's eyes. "Don't make my mistake. He's fighting for you. Fight back." The confession hung in the air, adding unexpected depth to Emily's character. Sienna reached over and squeezed her hand. "Thank you. That means more than you know." They talked for another hour, Emily filling Sienna in on the actual state of things, the business Xavier had built, the clients he'd sent her way over the years. By the time Emily left, promising to help with whatever wedding timeline they decided on, Sienna felt like she was seeing the full picture clearly for the first time. 3 months, she heard herself say, the words coming out stronger than she expected. "I'll marry you in 3 months. That gives us time to do this right, to rebuild trust, to make sure this is solid. But Xavier," she squeezed his hand, "I'm not running, I promise. I'm staying, and I'm choosing this. I'm choosing you." The smile that spread across his face was pure joy, unguarded in a way she rarely saw. 3 months. 3 months, she confirmed, "and we do this right this time. No secrets, no running, no letting other people's voices get in our heads. We build something real." "Deal." Xavier pulled her into his lap, his arms wrapping securely around her waist. 3 months, and then you're mine, officially, legally, irrevocably, mine. "I'm already yours," Sienna said, the truth of it settling into her bones, like something that had always been there, just waiting for her to acknowledge it. "I've been yours since the day we met. I just forgot for a while. Then I'll spend the next 3 months reminding you." His mouth found hers. "Every single day, I'll remind you exactly where you belong." And as Sienna melted into him, surrounded by his warmth and his certainty and his unwavering love, she finally let herself believe they were meant to be together. Later that evening, Xavier took her out of the hotel for the first time since their confrontation. They went to dinner at an upscale restaurant, and Sienna felt nervous in a way she hadn't since their early dating days. But Xavier's hand stayed on the small of her back, warm and possessive, grounding her. When they ran into some of his business associates, Xavier didn't hesitate. "This is Sienna," he said, his arms sliding around her waist and pulling her close. "My fiancée. We're getting married in 3 months." The public claiming sent a thrill through Sienna even, as it made her nervous. But Xavier's certainty was infectious, and when she looked up at him, saw the pride and possession in his eyes, she felt some of her fear dissolve. This was real. He was claiming her, publicly and unapologetically, exactly like he'd promised he would. Back in the suite that night, Xavier pulled her close as they got ready for bed. "How do you feel?" he asked, his hands gentle as they framed her face. Terrified, Sienna admitted, but also, good. Right. Like this is exactly where I'm supposed to be. It is, Xavier said simply. You're exactly where you belong. With me. And over the next 3 months, I'm going to prove that to you so thoroughly, you'll never doubt it again. That's a big promise. I'm good at keeping promises. His forehead rested against hers, and Sienna felt the